In 1967, as young Americans flooded the streets with anti-war banners and flower crowns, in the hidden rooms of the Detroit auto empire, Chevrolet engineers were conducting a completely different experiment. Not a protest, not poetry, but steel, gasoline, and speed. They weren't creating a car. They were creating a monster, a compact, high-revving machine, born for the racetrack, and it would shake the entire American automobile industry. Today, I'm going to tell you about the Chevrolet 302 Vate, an engine that General Motors deliberately kept hidden because it was too powerful, too fast, and too dangerous. You think you know all about American muscle cars? Think again. You don't know anything until you learn about the 302, a 5-liter engine filled with mechanical rebellion, shoved into a body too small, and designed with one sole purpose: to beat the competition in silence, surpassing all barriers set by the corporation. This is not just an engine. It's a mechanical battle, an organized rebellion wrapped in cast iron with a scream that revs up
to 7 RPM.
while the rest of the world is still fumbling at 500. And the most significant part? This engine was never supposed to exist. It violated GM's internal rules on engine displacement. It upset the product hierarchy that Chevrolet had built. And it was too good to exist in a world where profit was more important than performance. But by the time the higher-ups discovered what was going on, it was too late. The 302 had escaped the lab and was out on the streets. And from that moment, everything changed forever. Let's look back at that time. In the late 60s, Detroit wasn't just an industrial hub. It was a battlefield. Ford, Chrysler, and GM were in an all-out horsepower race with no mercy. No rules of conduct, no ethics, only one goal: domination. And the hottest front back then was Trans Am, the most brutal racing series in America. The rules of Trans Am were clear. The engine displacement must not exceed 305 cubic inches. Ford already had a 302 engine for the Mustang. What about Chevrolet? The smallest they had was a 327, not eligible, too big. And then, a group of engineers at Chevrolet decided to do what the company forbade. They created a new engine. They took the 327 block
with a 4-inch bore
and mated it with a 283 crankshaft with a 3.0-inch stroke. The result? Exactly 302 cubic inches. A bold hack without permission from above. No promotional campaign. Just one simple idea: create something to beat Ford, and do it in a way no one expected. But what they created wasn't just a new engine. They created a mechanical rebel. While GM executives were still focused on big blocks and family cars, down in the basement, a skunkworks team was nurturing a wild beast, one that would become the heart of the Z28 Camaro. The 302 only officially existed for 3 years: 1967, 1968, and 1969. But unofficially, it became a symbol of an era where performance came first, and profits didn't matter. So what made the 302 so special? Let's talk about the technical details for a bit. The bore-stroke ratio was 1.33:1, extremely ideal for high revving. While most Vate engines of the time would start to sputter at 5,500 RPM, the 302 started singing from that number,
roaring up to 7 and beyond.
On paper, Chevrolet listed it at only 290 horsepower to avoid trouble, but anyone who actually drove a Z28 knew that number was a lie. In reality, 350, even 375 horsepower in its original configuration. Dig deeper, and you'll find components not meant for regular cars: forged crankshaft, forged pistons, a camshaft with nearly half an inch of lift, A11, 1 compression ratio, Holly R 453 carburetor, fueling it like a fighter jet, the sound from the cast iron exhaust. It wasn't just sound, it was a declaration of war. But here's the interesting part. Every detail of the 302 was overbuilt. Coincidence? I don't think so. It didn't resemble a commercial engine. It resembled a race engine in disguise. The double hump cylinder heads with 2.2-inch intake valves, developed from the racing program at Daytona, Aluminum intake manifold, sourced from the testing department. The connecting rods, identical to those used on the Lady 8427 engine, the engine GM used for real racing cars. Even inside the block, the engineers secretly integrated additional oil passages, reinforced bearing surfaces, things that weren't found in any other Chevrolet engines at the time. So why did they stop producing it? Why did Chevrolet kill something that was almost perfect? The answer wasn't technical. It was internal politics. The 302 was too good. It made the big blocks, which had higher profit margins and stronger marketing, seem obsolete. If you could buy a Z28 Camaro, lighter, better handling, and just as powerful as a 396, why bother with a big block? And that was the biggest crime the 302 committed. It broke the power structure that GM had built. Internal documents leaked later showed GM started to worry about what they called the Z28 problem. They quietly reduced production, limited promotion, and then ended it in silence. By 1970, the 302 was gone. The new versions were tamer, more emissions-friendly, and most importantly, they didn't disrupt the business strategy. The most interesting part? When racers and performance enthusiasts begged to continue producing the 302, even in limited quantities for racing purposes, they were met with silence from the company. However, no matter how much GM tried to cover it up, the truth always finds a way to reveal itself. The Chevrolet 302 did not die. It simply entered another phase. It became a legend. And that legend was written with tire marks on racetracks across America. In 1968 and 1969, the Camaro Z28, equipped with the 302 V8, didn't just participate in the Trans Am series, it completely dominated. When Mark Donohue, the brilliant driver for the Roger Penske team, took the wheel of the Sunoco Blue Z28, what had once been GM's dark experiment, had become the dominator of the biggest racing league in America. In the 1969 season alone, the Z28 won 10 races, in a season filled with heavy-hitting competitors like the Ford Boss 302, Dodge 340, and AMC Javelin. But no matter how much money and technology the competitors poured into the racetrack, they still couldn't defeat the cast-iron monster from Chevrolet. And it wasn't just about winning, it was the incredible durability of the 302 that made the other teams despair. While other engines required overhauls after a few laps, the 302 roared continuously at 7,000 RPM, lap after lap, as if it were challenging the laws of physics. Ford and Dodge teams sat in their pits, quietly watching smoke rise from their engines, while that small Camaro kept running non-stop. But what was even more impressive was its adaptability. Though born for endurance racing, cars using the 302 also triumphed in drag races, hill climbs, and endurance events. It wasn't a game of luck. It was a versatile machine, a true warhorse, for those who knew how to harness its high rev range. And then, as the car world entered the era of emissions and regulations, the Chevrolet 302 quietly disappeared from the production line. But collectors didn't forget. In fact, they began hunting down every remaining engine, as if searching for a lost treasure. Today, a fully original Z28 with the numbers matching 302
Can fetch between $150
and $250,000 at auction, and with special Copo versions or rare custom orders, the sky's the limit. Why is the 302 so sought after? Not just because it's rare, although only about 20,000 Z28s were produced with the 302, but because it's the final symbol of an era of pure performance, before emissions, regulations, and suits killed the passion. Each 302 engine is like a historical record. Every casting number, every date code, tells a story GM never wanted to tell. Ironically, the engine that GM once tried to bury became one of their most valuable creations. Parts like a hardened camshaft, a forged crankshaft, special Holley carburetors are now sold for prices that leave even the engineers of the past in awe. An original, unused intake manifold NOS, new old stock,
can be priced as high as $5. And so,
A 302 authentication industry was born, where people use microscopes to examine every mark, every casting, every metallurgical data, just to distinguish the real deal from the rebuilt ones. In the world of high-end muscle car collecting, the 302 is scrutinized more carefully than evidence in a criminal case. And if you think the 302 is dead, think again, because its technical DNA, that philosophy of compact, light, high revving, true performance, still exists in modern engines today. Look at GM's LS series, large bore, short stroke, high revving, over square design, clearly a spiritual descendant of the 302. When GM introduced the LS77 0L engine in the 6 Corvette ZO 6, an engine capable of revving to 7,000 RPM in a production car, they didn't create something new. They just resurrected an old monster. Not just GM, but Ford and Dodge followed suit. Ford with the Coyote Vate, Dodge with the modern Hemi. All three returned to learn from the old lessons. The optimal bore-stroke ratio, the lightweight rotating assembly, the cylinder heads optimized for airflow. What was once considered the military secret of the 302 is now the standard in the high-performance world. And even in the underground world, where racing teams and private tuning shops operate off the radar, the 302 still lives. Many people are still building modern versions of the 302 with new generation parts, but keeping its old spirit intact, compact, high-revving, pure performance. They don't call it a replica, they call it the soul's heir, and that's what makes the difference. The 302 is not just an engine, it's a manifesto, a testament that when engineers are free, when passion outweighs profit, they can create mechanical miracles. In just 3 short years, the Chevrolet 302 showed the world performance doesn't have to be big, power doesn't have to be heavy, and victory doesn't always belong to the one with the most money. Today, each surviving Z28 carries with it a question that every car enthusiast has asked themselves: what if the 302 had continued to evolve? What if GM wasn't afraid of it? What if Camaro Z28s kept getting that rebellious heart? What would the American car industry look like today? The truth about the 302 was never printed in a brochure. It wasn't in a TV commercial. It was written in the blackened tire marks on the road, the gleaming eyes of drivers passing big blocks, and the silent smiles of engineers who knew they had created something great, even though no one allowed them to do so. The 302 is not just an engine. It's a mechanical rebellion, cast in iron, forged in steel, and breathed to life by passion. If you think this story is worth it, don't forget to hit subscribe, like, and share the video to spread the passion for cars to more people. Because the most interesting secrets are often hidden in things the manufacturers don't want you to know. See you next time.